Kathy here, and welcome back to my channel. In the next few episodes, I would like to talk about religions, or more precisely, about what religion represents to people and how faith can be fully integrated in our modern societies. These podcasts will not be about judgment nor prejudice, but simply to try to learn from each other. This is not in any way a critique or an endorsement of any religion or belief. For my first interview, I have decided to invite Mr. Alfatih Hamad, who will talk to us about the way he and his family have fully integrated Islam in their busy lives. Alfatih is a Sudanese citizen born and raised in Sudan. As a young adult, he studied in the University of Khartoum in Sudan and a number of French institutions, notably the Universities of Bordeaux III, where he prepared a doctorate thesis, then lived in France, where he was a cultural attaché of Sudan and permanent representative to UNESCO, before joining the Secretariat of UNESCO in Paris and then relocated to New York City to become a deputy director in the UNESCO Liaison Office in the city that never sleeps. All along, he continued to profess his love for Allah with his wife and their beautiful children, and also never ceased to honor diversity and cultural differences. Good morning, Alfatih, and welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
I am so glad you accepted to speak to me today, but first, I have to admit that it feels very strange calling you Alfatih because to me, you have always been Mr. Hamad.
Well, I guess that's the French protocol. It has always been somewhat formal and stiff, as you know. Things like tu, vous, monsieur, and so on and so forth. I'm just teasing you, of course. However, I have always called you Kathy, maybe because I was and still am your elder, but most definitely because we are in America and that is a common practice.
So, for background purposes, you and I met in 2001 when I first entered UNESCO as a junior staff. You were my boss by then and told me so much about the UN system.
Well, I think the boss stage didn't last that long. We quickly became friends, or so I hope, and built some kind of francophone, francophile complicity in a predominantly Anglo-Saxon working milieu. Also learned a lot from you, as I was, like most of my generation, absolute layman in communications technology, and your generation happened to be on top of it.
So, Mr. Hamad, today, as you know, I would like to speak to you about religious belief. You are a Muslim man. You have raised your children as good young US Muslim men and women. So first, can you please define the word Islam for us all?
That's a really tall order. I'm afraid it won't be easy to define Islam in a podcast or even a series of podcasts for that matter. It's, as we all know, one of the three Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And while maintaining a common origin and sharing the same DNA, if I may say so, it also maintains complex relations with these two siblings, mainly due to historical and political considerations more than faith issues. In the case of Christianity, however, the main theological difference seemed to reside in the notion of a Trinity, that is, in the context of monotheism. In Islam, Jesus, may peace be upon him, is acknowledged as a senior prophet, but not as Son of God, since God, Allah, does not beget, nor is he begotten. Lam yalid wa lam yulad. Incidentally, it's interesting to know that Mary, to my knowledge, is the only woman, yes, the only woman, if I'm not mistaken, mentioned by name in Quran. as being the woman selected from amongst the women all women in the world, purified and groomed to carry the word of Allah, kalimatullah, meaning Jesus. And coming back to Islam per se, the etymology of the term means submission, but not any submission. It means submission exclusively to the Creator, and hence, in the final analysis, liberation from any other form of subjugation. The word submission is sometimes source of confusion among some Western intellectuals. A case in point is the renowned French writer Michel Houellebecq. In his novel Soumission, released by a very strange coincidence the same day as the Charlie Hebdo terrorist attack, and indeed I mean coincidence, he literally equates Islam with pure submission to an imaginary Islamic rule in France after presidential elections of 2022. Now, this kind of stereotype, particularly when advanced by iconic writers like Houellebecq, made Islamophobia grow exponentially. Add to that the multiplication of terrorist attacks falsely perpetrated by Qaeda, ISIS, and others in the name of Islam, but that's a different story. Now, beyond the theological doctrine, Islam is also a way of life and a code of conduct in the community or ummah. The Quran contains the overarching guiding principles and frameworks of this code, and the source of legislation in many countries. But the deeds and sayings of Prophet Muhammad, the Sunnah, are complementary to that source, even though some of them are possibly the figment of imagination of some ulama or scholars for specific political ends.
Thank you, Mr. Hamad. Now, you have 5 grown children, and each one of them has succeeded in life. Can you please tell us how you introduced Islam to your children and taught them how to integrate religion in their lives?
I raised my kids largely as non-dogmatic Muslims. I tried to guide them towards moderation and respect for other beliefs, for that essentially is the purpose of Islam and its essence. Lakum dinukum waliya din, meaning you have your faith and I have mine.
Monsieur Hamad, can you please define political Islam for us?
The problem of Islam is largely related to the so-called political Islam, which often classifies people by faith or even by sects inside the same faith, as is the case with the perennial conflict between Shia and Sunnah. Some regimes are theocracies such as Iran and Saudi Arabia in 2 different camps, Iran being Sunni Shia and Saudi Arabia being Sunnah. Some are Muslim countries with secular systems of governance except for family law matters. Others have been totally secular, as is the case with Tunisia and Burqiba, but are now governed partially by Islamists in partnership with some secular entities under civil law.
What would you consider as being the major challenges and assets of Islam in the modern world?
One of the main problems of Islam is Islamophobia. It is no doubt the most serious problem facing Islam today. Nevertheless, I believe the worst enemies of Islam are, in some cases, the Muslims themselves, or to be more specific, the so-called Islamic movements, who often see the mosque as the shortcut to presidential palaces and accumulation of power, but also of wealth. This was recently the case in my own country, Sudan, where the Islamists, empowered by a junta of ideological military men through a coup d'etat in 1989, coup d'etat engineered by Hassan al-Turabi, ruled the country for 3 decades and wreaked havoc on its economy and social fabric through corruption, civil war, ethnic cleansing in Darfur and the south, and so on and so forth. What used to be a normal, banal civil war, although war is never normal or banal, became quote-unquote jihad under the rule of the Islamists. Under the false pretext of Sharia, a set of rules justified the abusive control of individual liberties, specifically of women. But following the December Revolution in 2019, in which women played a pivotal role, the legal system was radically reformed to give wider rights to women, including abolishing travel restrictions on women, particularly the consent from a male guardian when traveling with her children, criminalization of female genital mutilation, which anyway had nothing to do with Islam. It's pharaonic and pagan and has nothing to do with Islam. Another typical sample of the demagogy of political Islam is the Erdogan regime in Turkey. Saudi Arabia, governed under strict Wahhabi ideology, is now rushing to modernize, not out of genuine concern, I believe, but rather to calm international public opinion after the horrific murder of Adnan Khashoggi. For instance, women are now allowed to drive.
Mr. Ahmad, are you telling me that women were just granted now the right to drive?
Yes, Kathy, they didn't have the right to drive so far.
Now, Mr. Ahmed, I would like to ask you another question. We both know that in life there are good people and bad people, regardless of the religion. So, of course, it applies to the Muslim religion. What does it mean to be a good Muslim to you?
Being a good Muslim for me is to be the best ambassador of Islam in a predominantly non-Muslim environment. As a diaspora Muslim, having lived the major part of my adult life in Europe and the USA, I want my family to live in perfect harmony with the host communities, mainly of Christian faith, but also influential Jewish communities and minorities. I consider that doing my prayers, fasting, performing pilgrimage, which I was blessed to do twice, paying zakat, etc., are all actions that are so individual to me, that is to say, between me and Allah. On the other hand, sharing joy, sadness, and hopes with my non-Muslim host community is an act of interfaith commitment. By the way, my favorite mosque in New York is named Jesus, Son of Mary Masjid. It was a church before, bought by Muslims and used as a mosque, another house of worship. This act, to me, is a very civilized move in the way towards interfaith dialogue and mutual understanding. The underlying message is they are all houses of worship.
Yeah, communication and understanding and respect. This is key to our future society, basically. So I have another question, please, for the people who are uneducated, such as myself. Can you please tell us what the Quran is? Can you please define the Quran for us?
Now you're asking me about Quran. That's a very wide question. But however, for believers, Quran is the miracle given to Prophet Muhammad, as other prophets, especially Jesus, were given different miracles for their times. The Quran is the sacred book with infinite divine wisdom and a set of commands for conduct here on earth. The first word ever revealed to Prophet Muhammad, who was illiterate, mind you, in the sense that he didn't write or read, was read, iqra, meaning that knowledge was basic to understand the revelation. The Quran puts a lot of emphasis on logic and the quality of reflecting on things rationally. It is full of expressions such as يتفكرون, to reflect, يعقلون, apprehend, etc. And it is an invitation to not to a blind obedience, but to rational reading of relations between human beings and between them and their Lord.
Now, you were civil servant most of your life, so you always worked with people with multiple beliefs, and you continuously made friends, just like me, from multiple religions. How were you able to remain true to yourself and to your faith while living and working in a multiple cultural society?
Well, it takes both tact and self-confidence to be able to entertain normal relations with people of different cultures and beliefs. I feel neither superior nor inferior to people of other faiths or to agnostics or whatever. Of course, like everyone, I have my own prejudices, but I try to analyze them as rationally as possible to find a common ground with the other. Maybe the fact that I lived most of my adult life in an international environment did help me tremendously in putting me in that mindset. And the older I get, the more I feel comfortable in that position. For instance, I'm blessed to have among my best friends a Jewish couple in their 80s now that I came to know in a bagel place in Queens, New York at age 65 or so. We laughingly call each other cousins. But if you examine the question very seriously, you realize how much is in common between the two religions.
So again, for education purposes, and please forgive me for my ignorant questions, but can you please explain to us why it is important to visit the Mecca and to observe Ramadan each year?
The pilgrimage, or Hajj as you know, is a once in a lifetime obligation for any Muslim who, and this is sine qua non condition, can afford it both financially and physically. You got to be in good health and you got to be possessing enough financial means to finance it. It is one of the 5 pillars of Islam, and a Muslim travels to the land of the 2 holy mosques in Mecca and Medina and performs a set of rites or rituals. It is without any doubt the largest and most diverse congregation of persons doing the same thing at the same time. The number of pilgrims varies from year to year with an average of 2.5 million. It is impressive and generates awe in the first place, and then values of extreme humility and solidarity. Malcolm X, or Al-Haji Malik al-Shabazz as he came to be known, described his experience and how tens of thousands of pilgrims from all over the world and of all colors, or as he put it, from blue-eyed blondes to black-skinned Africans, help him modify his approach to racism by not categorically classifying the white man as the devil. They all participate in the same ritual, displaying a spirit of unity and brotherhood that his experience in America had led him to believe never could exist between the white and the non-white. Muslims, unfortunately, Muslims all over the world are extremely saddened this year due to the almost cancellation of Hajj for the first time, that is to address the COVID-19 pandemic. Hajj this year is limited to 10,000 persons only, and exclusively from among the residents in the country. It was extremely wise and courageous of the Saudis to take such a draconian measure to save lives. But for some devout Muslims, it may well look like the end of the world.
Now, would you say that the younger generation of Muslims is following in the footsteps of the older generations in practicing the teachings of Islam?
Well, the generational gap, as you know, exists in everything, almost in everything. And of course, you can expect a degree of evolution in the field of religion as in any other field of life when it comes to the young generation. Young Muslims are far less inhibited in their relations with other religions. Their Islam is more cosmopolitan and more flexible, particularly those who are born and raised in non-Islamic countries with the huge expansion of immigration. And the darker side there is always a darker side, unfortunately, is that some of them are much more radicalized and blindly follow groups such as ISIS and Boko Haram. In Somalia, the major terrorist movement carries the name of Shabab, which means the youth. One thing is sure, however, Islam as a faith is still expanding among young people outside the sphere of Islamic countries, and the young converts enrich it with their own vision of the world.
Now, talking about enrichment and evolution, I would like to speak now about the feeling that religion provides. Religion can sometimes feel empowering as they provide peace and comfort to people, but they can also create anxiety and lead to judgment among believers. So, Mr. Hamad, how do you deal with that? And can you please give us an example?
Indeed, religion or religions in plural provide the spiritual driving force that empowers the individual to pursue personal happiness and social cohesion. Islam is not different from other religions in this respect. It sets out the basic rules for a sane life and a harmonious society, and as an incentive, it offers a set of rewards and punishments in this life and the hereafter. It is this active spirituality that is the essence of Islam. The danger comes when some sick minds interpret these notions in a devious manner. Take the notion of jihad. It doesn't mean aggressing other nations or societies in the name of Islam. It means defending one's own faith when it is threatened by others. Also, those people ignore that the highest form of jihad in Islam is jihad against one's own self and one's basic instincts of greed, injustice, and arrogance. At the end of the day, the main source of empowerment in Islam comes from the feeling that one is a component of a larger community and thus in the service of an ideal shared by more than 1.8 billion fellow Muslims, fellow humans, being the world's second largest religion after Christianity.
Well, I feel we learned so much from you today. Thank you so much, Mr. Hamad. I really appreciate your willingness to share your thoughts with us. So next, we will talk about Catholicism with Renda and Rima from Lebanon. So stay tuned.
Thank you, Kathy, for having me in your program, and I hope I wasn't very heavy on the listeners. Thank you. Good luck.
That's it for today. If you, just like Mr. Hamad, are interested in participating in one of our future recordings, if you have questions or if you would like to share your adventure with us, please do contact me at bbonclody@gmail.com. Stay tuned for our next episode and always remember to respect one another. Thank you so much, Mr. Hamad, and see you very soon.
Thank you.